In 1994, there was nothing major for Star Wars on the immediate horizon. The special editions were underway, but the release was still 3 or so years off. Sure, the expanded universe was continuing with books, comics, and the occasional video game, but there was nothing big to get fans really excited. To fill this gap, a bold experiment was thought up. Shadows of the Empire was to be a movie without a movie, a blockbuster-level story that would be released across multiple mediums with gaming and merchandise built in from the start. The idea emerged from a conversation between then Bantam Books editor Lou Aronica and Lucasfilm's Lucy Autry-Wilson. The two realized the franchise had a strong network of licensees in publishers, game developers, and toy makers. Getting everyone together, they could tell one grand story and profit from it greatly. The project was greenlit for 1996, a strategic choice to lead up to George Lucas's Star Wars Special Edition releases starting in 1997. According to Lucasfilm licensing VP Howard Rothman, part of this experiment was to answer the question of how interested fans still were in the franchise. From the start, Lucasfilm treated Shadows of the Empire as seriously as they would a new film release. The directive from George Lucas himself was that the story should explore the criminal underworld of the galaxy in a believable and grounded way, paralleling real-world organized crime. This meant introducing a major crime syndicate and a crime lord to lead it, elements that would become more and more popular as the franchise goes on. Originally, the idea was to set this new story between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. This was a very popular time to explore in the expanded universe. LucasArts designer John Knowles pitched moving the story later in the timeline to the dark period between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. This era offered a fertile ground for a grittier story and had been relatively untouched. Lucasfilm agreed, recognizing the post-Empire setting would let them push the tone darker to match the popular vibe of the 1990s. With Lucas's approval on the basic premise, a brief outline was drafted. Luke Skywalker would be menaced by an assassination plot from the criminal underworld, and a new ally in the form of a mercenary bodyguard figure would help thwart those threats. Planning kicked into high gear with a massive meeting at Skywalker Ranch in November of 1994. Representatives from all licensed groups, novels, comics, video games, toys, etc., met with Lucasfilm's story editors. Author Steve Perry, who Bantam had hired to write the novel, was present and found himself with the massive task of taking notes, forming a plan, and giving each arm what they needed to shine in their respective arenas. Because Shadows of the Empire is a single narrative told from different perspectives, coordination was absolutely crucial. Each medium demanded certain set pieces, characters, or action scenes. For example, LucasArts needed epic battles and levels for the video game. Dark Horse Comics wanted bounty hunter-centric subplots, and the toy division needed cool vehicles to put along with the cool characters to sell more toys. Perry later recounted that he worked to weave all of these elements into his master outline so that the novel could accommodate and support the comic and the game scenes. The novel would be the backbone of the entire initiative, every other branch leading off of that. A 25-page outline was drafted, incorporating feedback from everyone involved. This level of collaboration was new territory, but completely necessary if this were to succeed. If the story wasn't cohesive, the whole house of cards could collapse. Prince Xizor was created to be an imposing new villain outside the Empire's hierarchy. He was a unique design, not an armored bounty hunter or dark force wielder. The reptilian alien had to be imposing enough to give Darth Vader something to think about. Xizor was to be a corrupt but brilliant mastermind. One character trait, animalistic pheromones, led to the biggest controversy and complaint of the entire initiative. Xizor's attempted seduction of Princess Leia involved these pheromones, which made it pretty creepy. Supposedly, there were talks for Xizor to succeed in sleeping with Leia. Steve Perry smartly flat-out refused to take things that far. He recognized that having the saga's most beloved heroine sexually assaulted would lead to outrage. If you're getting value or entertainment out of any of my transmissions, it would mean a lot if you would join the Remnant and subscribe. There will be a separate transmission all about the story of Shadows of the Empire itself, the entire story, not just this odd bit. Dash Rendar was created as a Han Solo-like scoundrel turned hero. Dash was made to be an easily relatable familiar presence. We all love Han Solo, so getting to step into the shoes of a new Solo-like character was a shortcut to us liking Dash Rendar as well. The similarities got to be a bit much with Rendar's cocky attitude, origins on Corellia, He even has a Millennium Falcon-esque ship called the Outrider. With the characters created, concept artist Michael Butkus and comic artist Killian Plunkett drew numerous iterations of both Dash and Xizor in early 1995. They also got to put a bit of their own spin on the legacy characters like Luke and Leia in the form of costuming and how they might progress between the movies. Famed poster artist Drew Struzman was commissioned to paint the novel's cover. To keep this all coherent, Lucasfilm's continuity specialist Alan Couch oversaw a master timeline or flowchart. The novel, comics, and game each had their own path, but they would all also intersect at times. It was crucial that there were no continuity issues. Couch's charts showed where each major player was at any given time, especially when they were not the narrative's focus. Lucasfilm also shared designs across teams. When Doug Chiang sketched something new, that art was sent to both the toy makers and the game developers to ensure that the 3D models and the toys matched the book's descriptions exactly. By early '95, the comics writer John Wagner had a storyline approved, and by April that same year, LucasArts had a full plot outline for the video game missions. In just 6 months from the initial meeting, Shadows of the Empire had its narrative and visual identity firmly in place. May 1996. Lucasfilm and its partners launched Shadows of the Empire, every branch coming out almost simultaneously. This was modeled after the merchandising frenzy of a new film release. The novel, Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire by Steve Perry, was released in hardcover in May of 1996 and immediately became a New York Times bestseller. This novel was the centerpiece of the entire story, chronicling the struggles of Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, and Lando to thwart Prince Xizor's schemes while trying to rescue Han Solo. The book gave fans what they craved, an official adventure with the original trilogy heroes. It notably filled in tantalizing gaps, like how Luke built his new lightsaber, what Many Bothans Died actually entailed. A junior novelization was also published, ensuring that the story could reach multiple age groups. Dark Horse Comics published a Shadows of the Empire comic 6-issue miniseries from May to October in '96. They were by John Wagner with art by Killian Plunkett. Rather than simply adapting the novel, the comics told a complementary side story with fan-favorite character Boba Fett as the lead. The comics also introduced original characters like Jix, an operative of Vader's. Steve Perry acted as a story consultant to keep it aligned with the novel. The comic issues sold strongly. Dark Horse actually followed up in 1998 with a sequel, Shadows of the Empire Evolution, focusing on Xizor's assassin droid, Guri, who had become an unexpected favorite. The comics could have been even more successful if prior knowledge of the novel wasn't necessary for context. In another landmark move, Lucasfilm produced a Shadows of the Empire original soundtrack. Composer Joel McNeely wrote a sweeping orchestral score, recorded by the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, meant to accompany key scenes from the book as if it were a film. The soundtrack was released in spring of 1996, allowing fans to listen to an actual score while reading the novel. It included new themes as well as familiar Star Wars motifs and came with liner notes describing which part of the story each track matched. While a soundtrack for a book was a novel concept, I'm sorry for that pun, it was praised for its quality. Another element that was fresh and new, but fit into the franchise seamlessly. Kenner released a full assortment of Shadows of the Empire action figures and vehicles. Not just unique characters like Dash Rendar and Prince Xizor, but legacy characters like Luke and Leia as well. Dash's Outrider and Xizor's Virago Starfighter were also made into toys. There was a 2-pack of Luke versus a unique villain that came bundled with comic issues highlighting the cross-media cooperation. Micro Machine sets, model kits, and other popular items tied in as well. High-end statues and limited edition dolls of Dash and Xizor were produced. Trading card company Topps put out a 100-card Shadows of the Empire set, featuring comic art and Hildebrandt painted scenes, which gave collectors even more to hunt down. The Shadows of the Empire video game became the breakout star of this entire endeavor. For many fans, it was their first introduction to the story. The game's development started early, with LucasArts working closely alongside the novel and comic teams in '95 to ensure the gameplay scenarios fit the plot. Led by project director Mark Hy Hutchinson and designer John Knowles, the team set out to create a title that would feel as cinematic as the Star Wars films. Released on December 2nd, 1996, just in time for the holiday season, for the Nintendo 64, and released on PC a year later, Shadows of the Empire was primarily a third-person action shooter and adventure game. It mixed in various gameplay styles, going from ground-based gameplay to piloting ships and vehicles. The variety was ambitious for its time. It meant to showcase the N64's 3D capabilities and appeal to a broad audience of gamers and Star Wars devotees alike. Thanks to Nintendo's backing the game, this had strong marketing and benefited greatly from the buzz around the new console. Star Wars fans and general gamers both loved the game. They loved it so much, it became the third best-selling N64 title of 1997, with over 1 million copies sold that year alone. It was also the #3 top-selling game for the '96 holiday season, despite being out for less than a month before the year ended. Obviously, the cross-promotional marketing and storytelling was working. Fans were loving it, but critics saw things a little bit differently. They agreed with the fans about the immersion and feel of it being very Star Wars. The graphics were excellent for the day. The original soundtrack by McNeely, combined with John Williams' existing themes, also earned praise for making the whole experience feel like you were truly playing a movie. The critics were more objective on the shortcomings of the game than the fans were. The majority of the third-person segments, which were the majority of the game, have clunky controls and frustrating camera issues. Even with these issues, major gaming outlets like IGN came to the correct conclusion that die-hard fans would want to play it anyway. The ultimate consensus was that Shadows of the Empire was a must-play for Star Wars enthusiasts, full of fan service moments. Importantly, it proved that there was a huge appetite for Star Wars in yet another arena. Its strong sales on N64 told LucasArts investing in high-production Star Wars games was something that they should be pursuing. The game's success paved the way for future games like Rogue Squadron and Jedi Knight. Both are also well regarded by fans to this day. For the fanbase, 1996's multimedia blitz was a dream come true. We lived for years in a drought of new screen content, since 1983 really. All at once, there was a new Star Wars adventure. You could read the book, read the comics, play the game, collect the toys, all while listening to the incorporated soundtrack, all part of one incredible and cohesive story. Fans especially appreciated the effort to make Shadows feel like an extension of the beloved original trilogy. As I mentioned, the novel sold extremely well, and many readers enjoyed how it tied into the movie events. Storylines such as the desperate efforts to retrieve Han Solo, the internal power struggle between Xizor and Vader, and the explanation of the Bothan spy sacrifice added intriguing layers to Star Wars lore. One highlight frequently mentioned by fans was finally seeing the criminal underworld with the Black Sun crime syndicate. This was the first time we got to see this specific aspect of the galaxy fleshed out from the top down. This didn't just tie into the original trilogy, but made the universe itself feel more fleshed out, more complex, and much larger. We got to experience Luke's continued Jedi training, Leia's undercover mission in Coruscant's underbelly, and Boba Fett's cat-and-mouse space chase. These elements with legacy characters help bridge the gap between Empire and Jedi in fans' minds, enhancing the film's continuity, especially in the early days of the expanded universe when there was still a lot of blanks left to fill in. Believe it or not all Star Wars fans were happy with Shadows of the Empire. Some longtime expanded universe readers and critics felt that this new story played it a little too safe in terms of originality. At its heart, the novel was a classic Star Wars story, exactly what many fans wanted, but it did mean that the story didn't stray too far from familiar territory. A few reviewers pointed out just how closely Rendar was to Han Solo. The villain, Prince Xizor, was also caught in the crosshairs. Many readers found him a refreshingly different antagonist, well-mannered, calculating, and operating in the shadows of Imperial politics. On the other hand, some felt that Xizor was one-dimensional, more presentational than a genuine threat. Notably, Star Wars Insider interviews revealed that even some members of the creative team had lukewarm feelings. Dark Horse editor Ryder Wyndham admitted that he never cared much for Xizor or Dash, labeling them as trivial. Nevertheless, Xizor's plot against Luke and Vader did succeed in making readers hate him, which is a villain's job. The most controversial aspect was easily Xizor's creepy interaction with Leia that we touched on earlier. To this day, there are discussions on the attempted seduction or assault. Some readers praise the scene for keeping Leia a strong and capable character who's able to fend off Xizor. Others feel the storyline veers uncomfortably close to things that Star Wars doesn't need to be getting into. Andor Season 2 definitely changed or stoked the flames of that conversation. While it worked in the more modern and more grounded Andor, a story utilizing legacy characters in the mid-90s likely wasn't ready to tackle such a serious thing. Steve Perry's refusal to cross that line was a good call that avoided some serious fandom backlash. The comic series sold well to core fans, but being reliant on a Star Wars novel, it didn't get as much media attention or pull in casual fans like the other aspects of this endeavor. Reviews from the time indicate that people enjoyed the gritty focus on bounty hunters. We got some solid fan service, like seeing Boba Fett in a dogfight with IG-88. The artwork by Killian Plunkett was praised for its stylized yet faithful take on the Star Wars universe. If anything, the comic's main limitation that one really should read the novel before reading the comics to get the full context. Standing on their own, the issues intentionally left out key moments, since the novel covered those key moments. I am all for supplemental and offshoot stories. I mean, that's what this whole lore channel is about. But each aspect of this story should have been able to stand on its own while serving the wider narrative. The comics didn't just tell an offshoot side story that didn't influence the main plotline. They reveal new information. The biggest moment that I did not know about for the last 18 or so years was that the comics imply that Xizor actually survives the end of the novel. When pressed, Perry mused that Xizor's fate was deliberately left uncertain. This kind of cross-media mystery is what us lore fans live for. The Shadows of the Empire soundtrack and other merchandise had more niche reception. This was understood from the start. The soundtrack album didn't chart with the pop hits of the day, but within the right circles, it was cool, well-loved, and an innovative bonus. Merchandisers were very happy with toy sales. Figures of Dash, Xizor, and the Outrider sold out in many places during the '96 holiday season. Its success reinforced the strong collector mentality of Star Wars fans. Outlets like Starlog and Cinefantastique magazines looked at the Shadows of the Empire as a fascinating marketing experience. Some critics were initially skeptical. This was a bold move and could easily have been a cheap cash grab. Lucasfilm's emphasizing story and creativity along with the quality put into all of it tie the elements together and help them win many doubters over. By the end of 1996, the whole push was a great success. It served fans, brought in money, and stoked the flames of excitement for the upcoming special editions, prequels, and a slew of new stories and merchandise to accompany those major franchise milestones. Financially, Shadows of the Empire was very successful. Each major component performed well in their area. The novel's bestseller status was on par with the hit Thrawn trilogy from a few years earlier. The game exceeded sales expectations on the N64, and the merchandise lines were very profitable. While Lucasfilm, of course, has not publicly released breakdowns of the revenue, insiders have indicated that the whole plan met or exceeded its targets. In an oral history, Howard Rothman recalled the project as a high point, noting that it was more about revitalizing the brand than immediate profit. But it ended up doing both while proving the commercial power of the Star Wars expanded universe. I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. Today's video is sponsored by me. Imperial Remnant now has a merch store, and it's not just designed specific to the channel. I'm working with a couple talented artists to bring you unique Star Wars themed designs. Check out the link in the description. Alright, back to the lore. A cool metric that's telling of the success is that the Shadows of the Empire project as a whole was so successful, by 1997, Lucasfilm went on to partner with Bantam Spectra's successor, Del Rey, for an even more ambitious publishing program, the new Jedi Order series. This partnership is still very much alive to this day. Internationally, the project also made waves. The novel was translated into multiple languages. Spanish, French, German, and Japanese were some of the biggest. The global Star Wars fan community embraced the story nearly as much as English-speaking fans did. The N64 game's availability in Japan introduced characters like Dash and Xizor to Japanese audiences, though Star Wars popularity in Japan was modest compared to that of the West. In Europe, the marketing accompanied the sci-fi magazine and convention circuit in '96, ensuring fans from the UK to Germany knew about it. Long story short, Lucasfilm successfully orchestrated a worldwide launch, something normally reserved for movie releases, and it worked. In my research, I came across a lot of information saying that Shadows of the Empire was a big success, but they all seemed to point out that there were no box office returns to compare things to. I found this an odd comparison because none of these outlets seem to mention the fact that, yeah, sure, you didn't have box office receipts, but you also didn't have the $60 to $100 million budget, plus at least 50% of that for marketing, which is what a major movie release of the day likely would have cost, and in the case of Star Wars, probably more. It kept Star Wars in the public conversation for 1996 and primed audiences for the special editions theatrical releases that followed in 97. These were also tremendously successful. I'm sure they were bolstered by the reawakened fandom, though I'm sure they would have performed excellent with nothing around them. Another issue I have with some of my research is that many outlets think that Lucasfilm seemed to screw things up by not immediately following up Shadows of the Empire with another story at the same scale. I'd have to disagree. Jumping right into another thing immediately could be diluting what made the first attempt so special. It may have also been rushed, as we've seen studios do again and again when something works, and not a success on repeat attempts. I'd like to see this kind of thing happen again for sure. We got something similar with the High Republic, but that lives primarily in novels with some help from the comics. No video game tie-in or strong merchandising pushes that were near this level. The reasons for not trying this experiment again was due to the IP licensing moving to Del Rey, and a lot more focus put on the prequels that followed the special edition in just a couple years. In time, there were similar media pushes, though not as extravagant. In 2008, Lucasfilm tried a similar approach, though scaled back, with The Force Unleashed, a video game-led multimedia story, openly citing Shadows of the Empire as a predecessor. And today, when we see Star Wars stories told across Disney Plus shows, novels, comics, and games in a coordinated fashion, we can recognize Shadows of the Empire as an early forerunner of that strategy. Beyond business, the legacy of Shadows of the Empire is evident in the fandom. Characters like Prince Xizor and Rendar became well-known names in the Star Wars expanded universe. Dash's ship, the Outrider, was even inserted as an Easter egg into the special edition of A New Hope, visible taking off from Mos Eisley, a nice nod from Lucasfilm to expanded universe fans, and one of the very few times that the two crossed paths directly. Black Sun, the criminal syndicate introduced in this story, went on to appear in numerous other Star Wars tales, and even the modern Clone Wars TV series. This brought more expanded universe elements into canon, though Xizor himself didn't make it until 2014. For years, fans clamored for an actual Shadows of the Empire film or animated adaptation. Steve Perry supported the idea of an animated movie adaptation of his novel. That never happened. Maybe someday we can hope. But bits of the story have been kept alive. The Shadows comic sequel and various references in sourcebooks kept its story going in the Legends continuity. In 2020, when Star Wars Insider interviewed creators for the 25th anniversary of Shadows of the Empire, it was clear that the whole endeavor is remembered with fondness. In retrospect, Shadows of the Empire occupies a special niche in Star Wars history. It was both a product of its time, the 90s era was full of experimentation for the EU. It proved Star Wars didn't need a movie to be real or important with the right mix of imagination and marketing. A strong story could captivate the audience just as well. To this day, even as Star Wars has moved into an era of abundant films and series, longtime fans still talk about 1996's Shadows of the Empire. What are your memories on Shadows of the Empire? Drop a note in the comments and check out this video next for more Star Wars lore.